Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 819. My opponent started off with c4, and I played knight f6, which is kind of a waiting move, waiting to see what white does. And I was expecting some kind of English or Reti type setup, maybe early fianchetto, but instead he just played d4, so we transposed back into a mainline queen's pawn opening. So that's the advantage of playing a flexible move like knight f6. Now I can play e6 and go for a Nimzo-Indian, which he allows with knight c3. So we're solidly in Nimzo-Indian territory here with bishop to b4. And now he plays an unusual move. So the move order was a little strange, but there was nothing really out of the ordinary. Some people use c5 as a transposition trick, but bishop d2 is definitely a rare move. You'll see it's way down on the list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, the ninth move on the list in terms of popularity. But, well, I've looked at this before. I've seen this move before, and I've looked at it with the chess engine, and it seems to be okay. It doesn't seem to be one of those moves that's a mistake. Yes, there's still an opening advantage to white after this, and black can play it in a number of different ways. a5, I guess, is an interesting try here, but I just treat it like a normal Nimzo-Indian and just try and get pressure on the center with c5. And it seems kind of logical to me to put pressure on that pawn when he hasn't bothered to defend it. And the most popular response, and also the one that I've seen, is to defend with knight f3. And I don't know, the line might go like this as an example. Castles, he takes, I take, and you know, he could go with g3 or e3. I think I will leave it here. Just want to show a typical kind of position that you get. And there's nothing really wrong for either side. Black is still going to have to deal with the problem of developing the light squared bishop, but his other pieces have natural squares and both sides have the bishop pair. White's a little behind in development, but will be able to get castled pretty quickly here. It just needs to play something like e3 and bishop e2 or d3, or going with the g3 route. Anyway, let's go back to the game. Here he played e3, which is actually a move I've seen a lot as well in this position. Kind of logical, preparing to take back with a pawn in the center and just defending that d pawn. And then here the book move is knight c6, although you see that we are actually pretty much out of the book. There's 0 games. And looking at it with this chess engine likes the move c takes d4. I just played d6, which is sometimes what I do when I'm not sure how this game is going to unfold. I'm just going with d6 and knight to c6 and castles, rook e1, pawn to e5, that kind of setup known as the Hübner variation when it's played against a normal Nimzo-Indian. And it seems like that's playable here too, although I think he did something to disrupt it. But actually, this is probably a point the chess engine is recommending taking here. C takes d4. Why not, you know, exploit this opportunity to trade a wing pawn for a center pawn? So now he's only got one pawn in the center and I have two, although my pawns are backwards here. And my bishop is still in a position to restrain the knight or trade itself off for the bishop. So seems like a reasonable way to play. I could castle here. And yeah, I guess I didn't follow it up after that. But I think that's what I would try next time. Anyway, I went d6 here, and he went knight f3. So this white is still keeping some kind of opening advantage through all of this. Let's see, I go knight c6, goes bishop e2. We both castle, and I put my rook on e8 with the intention of playing e5 here. And he kind of preempts me by playing this move d5. The chess engine really doesn't approve of that. You know, in a little bit, black is going to be equal. And this is one of the things that sort of gives away some edge. Chess engine would play with a3 here. Kick that bishop and force it to decide. It gives both moves as possible. The bishop could retreat. And the idea of coming back to f7, I would probably take. Just that's the way I usually play the Nimzo. And then knight e4 is an interesting move in this position. So something that black could consider. if white chooses this a3 line. But he went for d5 immediately. So I take, and he took back with the knight, which is a little bit surprising, actually. Normally they take with a pawn here, force me to move this pawn. And but anyway, he takes with the knight. And so I trade off the bishop. So I've gotten rid of this kind of problem piece here that was stuck out on b4, not doing a whole lot. He threw in knight takes f6, but this was actually the second kind of small mistake here. The chess engine definitely prefers just taking back the bishop and leaving it like this, and giving me the choice of whether I want to take this knight and get a pawn here or not. I probably would take, and this knight can come to the e5 square, and I can expand on the queen side. Might be an interesting way to play. But he solved all my problems by just taking this knight, or at least removed any doubt, and then he took back here. So that was all pretty much forced after after White decided that. But at this point, the chess engine thinks Black is at least equal, maybe a little better. So clearly, I think I said during the game he was playing it in too simple a fashion. You don't want to just trade off all the pieces without getting some kind of edge for it. And maybe he thought that he would get play against the my backwards d-pawn. But it's pretty easy for me to defend. I just have to develop this bishop quickly. And it's not so easy for him to attack. He can basically only attack it with his heavy pieces because the bishop is the wrong color to attack it, and the knight is just can't easily get to squares that attack that pawn. So it's fairly secure. Let's see. The best continuation according to the chess engine is bishop to f5, but I went bishop g4. I'm okay with trading off these light squared bishops. It's actually a pretty good piece for White. And when I push this pawn forward, and this trade happens, it'll give the bishop even more scope over here. So if the knight moves and I trade off that bishop, I'm okay with that. Let's see. He played h3, kicked the bishop. I dropped back. I'm not going to trade it for the knight. Then he played a3, maybe preparing to expand on the queen side. Brig by rook over, and I'm just planning to push this pawn forward. He goes b3, so he's got a solid pawn formation over here on the queen side, I guess. And I went knight to e7. So yeah, now I'm ready to push that pawn, and I don't think there's any way for him to stop it. He went knight h2 here and initiated another trade, so further simplification, and then I push on with d5. So I'm pretty much happy with the way this has gone, and the chess engine, again keeps it about in the range of equal or slight edge to Black through all of this. So I guess it's okay. Let's see. He went rook a to d1. The chess engine would take here, and then attack the c pawn. I think this is logical play, and then play b4. I'm just trying and undermine these pawns before they become strong. Try and create some weaknesses over here with something kind of like a minority attack, I guess. But in the long run, I'm going to have an extra pawn over on the queen side, and I can look forward to an end game where I have that kind of edge going for me. So I think Black still has something in this position, although it's very slight. So White should really be fine here. And he should be okay with this move too. He went rook a d1. I went ahead and took at this point, and I traded rooks. And then took on c4, and I played b6, holding up these pawns. So now he activates his knight with knight to g4. Maybe he can get something going with the queen and knight. Although this knight on g4 doesn't seem to be hitting any big targets, but I was a little worried about the knight coming into the e5 square and coordinating with the queen on f7. So put my queen over here on d6 to keep an eye on that square. Played e4, maybe thinking of pushing the center pawn forward. I go knight c6. And now the move rook e1, which seems like a very logical follow-up to his previous moves. This was actually flagged by the chess engine as a mistake, and really the first mistake of the game. All of the evaluations up to this point have been in the range of about even. And after this move, it gives Black an edge of almost a pawn, or around a pawn. Sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less. It's fluctuating. But it's interesting. what would a good move to be? What should white play instead? I think the immediate knight e3 is the recommendation, and he's looking at this square, so g6 to keep the knight out of that square, and then he can hop into d5. That's a pretty good position for the knight, and if I have to trade off my knight against his knight, that probably won't lead to a whole lot for me. So it seems like that's the way for white to play this. After rook e1, I spotted the move queen d4, and I think this is the reason why this is the rook e1 move was a mistake, is that he needed to preempt this queen d4 move. Because if white just trades queens, I get my knight to a really excellent position, looking at his undefended pawn at the moment, and it can be defended, of course, but that'll always be a weakness that I can set my sights on, and it can't easily come forward here because there's a pawn ready to take it. So, well, I don't know. I don't know if that's true. It's got a pawn defending it as well. So, but it seems like I get some pressure against the queenside pawns after that. So anyway, now he tries this knight e3 move, and I go for the queen trade. I wasn't really too happy about that, but I couldn't find anything better, and the chess engine didn't really have much else to recommend here. And he could take with either the knight or the pawn. I think they were rated about the same. He chose the knight and keeping his pawns together, so that's pretty logical. And now I go knight d4. I thought that was the point of my play so far, to get that knight to a good square. But the chess engine points out a couple of stronger moves. The immediate rook to d3. Just taking a look at those two pawns over there and forcing him into a passive move like rook to b1 and then g5. That's how the chess engine wants to play it. I might have thought of rook d3. I doubt if I would have thought of g5 here. It seems like that's just creating weaknesses over on the king side. So I might take that with a grain of salt. The other move the chess engine likes here is just king f8. But, well, being prepared to defend against a rook invasion and eliminating any back rank bait ideas that that white might have. So interesting suggestions. This move that I played, knight to d4, seems logical, and it keeps an edge for black, but maybe was not as strong as some of those other moves. So anyway, he replied rook to e3. And I went f6. I was starting to worry about back rank issues and also wanting to get my king in the game, so this seems okay. He goes king h2. And now I decide it's time to kick that knight. So I kick the knight with b5. And here's a second mistake. And I think this is a real mistake. I think after this I am winning, whereas after that first one it's maybe more of a significant inaccuracy, something. Not quite losing, but giving me an edge. Whereas this one seems to be winning for me. So he should go to a5. Knight a5. I don't think I even realized this, but it's also defending the b pawn, as well as looking at a couple squares it might hop into here. It seems to hold everything together. I can play rook d7, go rook d3, hitting my pawn, and rook to c7. And the chess engine still gives an edge to black here. Maybe because my knight is more centralized and my king is closer to the action. So I would still keep pressing for a win here. But maybe white can hold this. At any rate, he's managed to activate his pieces a little bit and pressurize some of my pawns here. I think the best thing I have going for me is I've got his knight sort of isolated over here. It doesn't have any squares it can move to at the moment. So maybe I can find a way to exploit that. So edge to black, but it would take me a while to win it. After knight d2, it seems that this is just winning for black. And now the first move is pretty obvious. The double attack hits the rook, hits the knight. And so rook e2. It's the only way to defend everything, and then I can grab a pawn. So I just go a pawn up at this point, but also I keep the pressure up, so I'm continuing to win here. Let's see, he pushes on. He's trying to get some counterplay going over here, and I just start pushing those queenside pawns. He takes, I take, and then he goes knight f1. Knight f1. I don't know what that was about. Yeah, he goes knight f1. He's going to reposition his knight and maybe get some pressure on this pawn. I just keep pushing it forward. Knight to e3. I put my rook behind the pawn. Knight to c2. So I think that makes my job a little easier. I think this rook and pawn ending should be a pretty straightforward win. So I take, he takes, and then king f7 is my first mistake. And I'm still winning after that. But there's a much simpler win, and when you have a simple win, you should just go for it. And I still have enough time on my clock to be thinking about it. And the key here is just to push the other pawn, right? It's a passed pawn. Passed pawns must be pushed. And if you count, and cancel that, I hit the wrong button there. If you count, it's 1, 2, 3 steps, and I'm already to the 7th rank. His rook takes. I push this one forward. His rook drops back. I push all the way, and queen, and he has to take. So that, you know, I'm three steps away from winning a rook here. And in those 3 steps, you know, his king can come forward. So, you know, might continue like this. Let's see if this race actually works. Actually, yeah, so not so clear. His king is just close enough to stop that. So maybe I have to throw in some other moves too. But anyway, a5, the chess engine gives us the clearest winning attempt at this. Oh, I went to the wrong spot. Yeah, it was here when his king was over on yeah, I wondered why that wasn't working. Yeah, it's when his king was over on h2. His king is too far away. So a5 right here. This is the move. Rather than moving my king. And now, as I was saying, you count 1, 2, 3, and his king is over here, so he can't stop both those pawns with just his rook, and his king is too far away, and in 3 moves over here, you can't get any counterplay going. So this just is simply winning, and I had enough time to figure it out, and instead I played king f7, which is just kind of a knee-jerk reaction. So I really should have paused to think and found that winning plan. Would have shortened the game. Anyway, this is still winning, as I said, but now his king gets closer. And let's see, he pushes on with g4. The chess engine at first thought that king e3 was winning, or not winning, thought that white was holding on with king e3 in this position, but well, sometimes you have to try and follow through some of these lines and see if they really work, and when it looks a little deeper, it finds out they don't. So, for example, if he plays king e3, I push on with a5, he can come in here and hit my rook and basically win a pawn. So I drop back, he can take, I can take, he takes, then I can play king d6. And this is still a winning position for black. The problem is this outside passed pawn, and I can push that pawn to a point where he has to come over and take it, and then my king can use this route to come in and attack the kingside pawns and round them up. So that's all going to be winning. So in this position, he pushed on with g4. Let's see, I played king d6, and yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward from here. I'm just trying to sneak my king in to this side and push my pawn through, which I will do unless he stops me. So he's forced to bring his king over, and then I started pushing this a pawn because I realized that I'm going to need to distract his king with that. And I kind of gained a step on what we saw in the previous position, but the end result is still the same. When he pushes with e5, this makes my job even easier. You know, probably the most stubborn defense is for you know, white to just kind of sit here, force me to push this pawn forward, and then come here later. When he pushes on with e5, it just makes it easier for me. But it should be a win in any case. And now that I've rounded up that pawn, it's pretty clear I'm going to come over here, take these 2 remaining pawns on the king side, and win with these 2. So he resigned at this point. Anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon.